Here with you guys today, the WNBA has elected to kick the can down the road. They have officially offered the players a 30-day extension on the current CBA deal. The only question remaining, will the players accept? Will the players say, you know what? We're good here. Why bother? Or will the players say, you know what? Maybe they will give us what we want. Maybe we don't have to.
The WNBA commissioner thought a simple 30-day extension would buy crucial time for negotiations. She was wrong, completely wrong. The players, emboldened by revolutionary new leagues and unprecedented leverage, weren't just playing hardball with Kathy Engelbert's office. They were playing a completely different game altogether, rendering her extension plan dead on arrival before it even had a chance to breathe. Her vision for a calm resolution was fundamentally doomed. Crushed under the weight of a player revolt no one in the league's front office had truly anticipated. The silence after the offer was deafening, signaling that the old ways of negotiation were obsolete and a seismic shift was already underway.
An extension to the players. Will the players accept it? I don't believe these players are going to accept it. We're going to get into it and break it down. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, hype the video. Let's go. Let's take off. So we have Alexa Philippou announcing here, breaking, the WNBA has offered players a 30-day extension to continue negotiations for a new CBA, sources told ESPN. Time is ticking for a resolution, one way or another, with Friday's deadline rapidly.
The WNBA officially offered a 30-day extension, hoping to avert a crisis as the Friday deadline loomed. However, sources close to the players swiftly indicated a cold reception. The union might consider it, they said, but only under the right circumstances, a condition that they immediately stressed did not yet exist. This direct rejection wasn't merely a negotiation tactic, it was a clear signal that the players saw little value in merely postponing the inevitable, unless substantial concessions were on the table. The league's initial olive branch was met with a blunt refusal, revealing the depth of the divide and the inherent flaws in Engelbert's strategy from the outset.
Sources told ESPN, time is ticking for a resolution one way or another, with Friday's deadline rapidly approaching. Very, very interesting. We saw that they weren't going to reach an agreement by Friday, earlier today, reported by Underdog Sports and many others. But just because they didn't reach an agreement doesn't necessarily mean that an extension wouldn't be coming sometime along the road. And it is officially here. Will the players accept? A source said the players may be willing to consider an extension, quote, under.
The conflict quickly escalated into a public spat, with both sides trading sharp accusations. WNBPA senior advisor Aaron Drake asserted that despite the players' hard work, it has been difficult to find the same sense of urgency from the league. Essentially, they painted the WNBA as dragging its feet, not genuinely committed to reaching an agreement. This narrative directly challenged the league's proclaimed dedication to a swift resolution, exposing a critical disconnect in perceived effort and priorities. It was clear the foundation for any good faith extension was crumbling fast, poisoned by mutual suspicion and a severe lack of shared urgency.
Announcing here, breaking, the WNBA has offered players a 30-day extension to continue negotiations for a new CBA, sources told ESPN. Time is ticking for a resolution, one way or another, with Friday's deadline rapidly approaching. Now, this does not mean that there's going to be a new deal. This does not mean the players will even agree to this. I believe the WNBA players are going to want to hold the league's feet to fire on this and not sign a deal. Let's take a look at what else she posted here, where she
The WNBA hit back hard, accusing the players of misdirection. A league spokesperson urged the union to spend less time disseminating public misinformation and more time joining us in constructive engagement across the table. This statement didn't just counter the players' claims, it openly accused them of manipulating public opinion, specifically citing Nafisa Collier name-dropping Caitlin Clark at every turn as a tactic. This explosive exchange revealed the negotiation table was not just stuck, but but completely fractured, with communication devolving into public mudslinging. Such a hostile environment made Engelbert's extension a fragile, almost impossible proposition.
A source said the players may be willing to consider an extension, quote, under the right circumstances, but they feel, quote, those circumstances do not yet exist. What are those circumstances? All right, we're willing to an extension, but does that mean that you're going to give us A, B, and we're just extending to iron out C? Does that mean you're going to give us A and C, and we're extending to iron out B? What is the crux of them saying, yes, we'll agree to the extension, or no, we won't? I'm sure they're...
A major sticking point emerged when the WNBA revealed it submitted a proposal on October 1st, but the players did not respond until Monday, weeks later. The league characterized this as a deliberate delay, undermining their good faith efforts. This wasn't merely a slow reply, it was interpreted as a strategic game of immature games where each side mirrored the other's perceived childishness, escalating wait times. You made me wait 15 days, I'll make you wait 17, became the unspoken rule. Such tit-for-tat behavior torpedoed any chance of a genuine resolution, illustrating why a simple extension was destined for failure.
Will even agree to this. I believe the WNBA players are going to want to hold the league's feet to fire on this and not sign a deal. Let's take a look at what else she posted here, where she said a source said the players may be willing to consider, they might be willing to consider it under the right circumstances, but they feel those circumstances do not yet exist. So I showed y'all where they said, L. Duncan said, oh, well, the players and the owners are speaking two different languages. How are you going to come to an agreement?
The union vehemently countered these claims, accusing the league of trying to run out the clock, effectively playing for time rather than meaningful engagement. They argued the WNBA was simply putting lipstick on a pig, offering recycled proposals that fundamentally failed to address player needs. This suggested a profound lack of transparency and accountability from the league's leadership, intensifying the players' distrust. The contention wasn't about minor details, but about the very structure and sincerity of the WNBA's proposals. This deep-seated skepticism ensured that any mere extension of the current deadlock would be unequivocally rejected.
To the 50-50 split, okay. I see what it is. We're not going to agree to the extension. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What would be holding the players back from saying, yes, we agreed to an extension. Let's try to iron out this deal so there is no lockout. Right? They'll still be able to negotiate if there's a lockout. However, players won't be able to head to the facility. They won't be able to get treatment. They won't be able to train with the team, with the staff. So there is some things to lose if there is a lockout. Sources, WNBA offers players extension on C.
The core financial disagreement centered on revenue sharing. The WNBA touted an uncapped revenue sharing model directly tied to league performance. However, players argued this proposal isn't tied to any part of the business and intentionally undervalues the players. They demanded a true 50-50 split of revenue, not just a system where pay increases were linked to vague league performance metrics. This fundamental ideological clash over economic valuation proved insurmountable. The players believed the WNBA's model perpetuated an unfair system, making any extension without addressing this crucial point utterly meaningless in their eyes.
These players, I believe, they think they have all the leverage with Project B and unrivaled. I thoroughly, truly believe that. And before we even get to the ESPN article, let's take a look at a post that was put up here. This is by a dude, Jacob Feldman. Okay. And here's what he had to say. Breaking, I'm told the WNBA has offered players an extension to the CBA, which is set to expire Friday. The Players Association has not accepted the deal and are not planning to accept it.
The players' newfound strength wasn't just about demanding more, it was about having genuine alternatives. The rise of new ventures like Project B and Unrivaled dramatically shifted the power dynamic. These leagues were reportedly offering 4 times, 10 times the amount of money compared to WNBA salaries, along with valuable equity stakes. This unprecedented financial leverage gave players a tangible escape route, making WNBA negotiations less about desperation and more about dictating terms. Kathy Engelbert's extension plan, conceived in an older era of player dependency, suddenly looked hopelessly outdated and entirely unappealing. Crucially, these alternative leagues offered a significant departure from WNBA norms. No exclusivity. Players could play in Project B or Unrivaled, secure substantial income and equity, and still potentially participate in the WNBA if a favorable deal were reached. This eliminated the previous dilemma of choosing between lucrative overseas play and the domestic league. The players could now do everything, play 5-on-5, athletes unlimited, and overseas without being constrained by the WNBA. This freedom fundamentally altered their calculus, giving them unparalleled bargaining power and rendering Engelbert's exclusivity demands obsolete. Adding fuel to the fire, the players made it clear they wanted a transformational CBA, not just a tweaked version of the old system. Their commitment was stalwart, demanding a revolutionary change that Engelbert's office seemed unwilling or unable to provide. The past precedent of a 60-day extension in 2019, which successfully led to a new deal in January 2020, highlighted how different this situation was. This time, merely extending talks wasn't enough. The players were pushing for a complete overhaul, reflecting a deep-seated dissatisfaction that a short-term extension simply couldn't address. The landscape had irrevocably changed.
In 2019, before the new deal was signed in January 2020. It would also shelve concerns over a potential work stoppage, either a strike initiated by the players or a lockout initiated by the owners. Alexa, if there's no CBA deal, the players can't strike because it would be a lockout. The players would be locking them out. The players' time to strike was during the season. Give us what we want or we're not playing. That's the time to strike. That time has come and that time has gone. What, they're going to agree to an extension only to stage a lockout? That would be pretty hilarious. And by hilarious, I mean
The unspoken, yet loudly echoed, demand from the players was chillingly direct. These players don't want to sign anything until Kathy Engelbert is gone. This was not just about terms, it was about leadership. Players believed her removal was a prerequisite for any meaningful agreement, viewing her as an impediment to progress. They sought a new commissioner who would greenlight their desires for increased pay and the freedom to play in other leagues without exclusivity. This personal animosity and lack of trust in Engelbert's Lizzis meant her extension plan was politically doomed, regardless of its specific economic merit.
Which is set to expire Friday. The Players Association has not accepted the deal and are not planning to accept an extension given where things stand. Though that could change, talks will continue. Player pay structure remains the #1 sticking point. The players are so stalwart in their commitment to having a transformational CBA, and it's our job to get it done, WNBPA legal counsel Aaron Drake told The Athletic in a podcast released earlier today. Drake said that it has been difficult to find the same sense of urgency.
The union's senior advisor, Aaron Drake, explicitly stated there would not be a new agreement by Friday, dismissing the league's optimistic outlook. He highlighted the difficulty in finding a rhythm and same sense of urgency from the WNBA, emphasizing the breakdown in collaborative spirit. This upfront admission of failure, even before the deadline, was a powerful declaration of player frustration and a lack of faith in the league's process. It underscored the perception that the WNBA was not genuinely committed to an equitable solution, thus making any proposed extension a futile exercise in prolonging the inevitable.
Has come and that time has gone. What, they're going to agree to an extension only to stage a lockout? That would be pretty hilarious. And by hilarious, I mean laugh at hilarious, not laugh with hilarious. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert acknowledged during the WNBA Finals that while she was hopeful both sides would meet the October 31st deadline, quote, "We have extended deadlines in the past." A source said the players might be willing to consider an extension under the right circumstances, but they feel those circumstances do not yet exist. WNBPA senior advisor and legal counsel Aaron Drake said recently on the Athletics No Offseason podcast that there will...
The WNBA's claim of negotiating in good faith and with urgency for several months was directly contradicted by the players' consistent narrative of stonewalling. This fundamental disagreement over the very nature of the NINA process itself proved corrosive. If one side believes the other isn't sincere, an extension becomes a mere formality, a delay tactic rather than a path to resolution. The public spat, with both sides accusing the other of bad faith, painted a picture of deep mistrust, ensuring that Engelbert's hopeful extension would be viewed with profound skepticism and ultimately rejected by a united player front.
Out the WNBPA for lying to the public, trying to sway public perception and opinion to rally the troops behind them, i.e., which is why you see Nafisa Collier name dropping Caitlin Clark at every turn and every second she can, all while refusing to sit down and have a meeting with Kathy Engelbert and do negotiations. Like, she literally skipped out on a meeting to go sit down with Kamala Harris and continue to bash the lady in the media, which I'm not a Kathy Engelbert fan. I think she's a bonehead. I think she needs to be fired. I believe all of that. But them refuse.
The players' stance hardened, rejecting the WNBA's assertion that their proposal offered significant increases in pay, benefits, and enhancements to their experience. For the union, these were superficial concessions, lipstick on a pig, designed to distract from the core issue of a fair revenue split. They demanded a system tied to any part of the business, implicitly critiquing the league's economic model as opaque and intentionally undervaluing player contributions. This deep ideological chasm meant that no amount of cosmetic tweaking or extended discussion under the current framework would ever be sufficient to satisfy their demands.
From the league, let's just to be frank to get this done. It does take two to tango. You guys are demanding and you're not willing to negotiate with your dance partner. You're not willing to dance with your dance partner. That's what's going on here. You want to dance salsa. They don't want to dance salsa. But they'll meet you on the dance floor and they'll dance something else with you. But no, we just want to dance just salsa. That's the only thing I want to dance to. No ballroom, no bachata, none of that. I only want to dance salsa. Okay. The WNBA countered that assertion in a statement provided to ESPN, saying that the league's...
The high stakes were clear. If no extension was signed, a work stoppage loomed, raising the specter of either a player strike or an owner lockout. Yet, the players viewed this not as a threat, but as their ultimate leverage. If the players say no, one analyst argued, that means they don't want to deal with it and they're going on strike until you give them what they want. This bold interpretation demonstrated profound player confidence, believing they held the upper hand in any stoppage. Engelbert's plan, designed to avoid this very scenario, was thus completely undermined by the players' willingness to risk it all.
Leverage. And they feel like, hey, look, if y'all not gonna act right, Project B is offering 4 times, 10 times the amount of money. Unrivaled is here. We got equity over there. If that league shut down, Unrivaled just go to 5-on-5. We all getting paid more. There's no exclusivity, so we still could go overseas and get our bread. We still could go do this and do that. We still could do Athletes Unlimited. We can do everything. That's how they looking at this. Let's take a look at the ESPN article on this whole situation. The WNBA has offered players a 30-day extension to continue negotiations, sources told ESPN.
The WNBA's internal acknowledgement of having extended deadlines in the past during the WNBA finals proved ironic. Commissioner Engelbert herself had expressed hope for an October 31st deadline, yet simultaneously conceded past extension. This admission inadvertently highlighted the league's prior pattern of kicking the can down the road, contributing to player skepticism that this time would be any different. Players saw this as a continuation of old habits, not a genuine shift towards a transformative agreement. The historical context only amplified the feeling that Engelbert's extension was more of the same, thus lacking any true appeal.
First, and the players didn't respond to it, only responded to it on Monday. Now, if you remember earlier in the season, we were told that the Players Association submitted a proposal and then the WNBA took a while to respond to it. So we're going to be getting into this immature games. Okay, you act like a child with me, therefore I'm going to stoop even lower and act more childish with you. You made me wait 15 days, okay, I'm going to make you wait 17 days. You made me wait 20 days, I'm going to make you wait 28 days. Quote, We urge the Players Association to spend less time disseminating public information and more time joining us in a constructive engagement across the table.
The league's strategic error became apparent, underestimating player unity and the allure of external opportunities. The WNBA's attempt to control the narrative by calling out public misinformation simply backfired, fueling more distrust. The players weren't just seeking better pay, they were fighting for fundamental structural changes, including the freedom to capitalize on their soaring popularity outside the WNBA's exclusive control. Kathy Engelbert's extension, rooted in maintaining the existing power dynamic, failed to grasp this fundamental shift, making it a futile offering to a player base that had already moved on.
To get a deal done, but it seems like they're at complete odds at this point, and that won't happen this time. If an extension is not reached, it could open the door for a potential work stoppage, either a strike initiated by the players. Now, if nothing happens, it is a strike. For all the it'd be a lockout, not a strike. No, the league is offering an extension because they're trying to get a deal done. If the players say no, that means they don't want to deal with it and they're going on strike until you give them what they want. So if the players don't sign an extension, the strike is on, point blank.
Ultimately, Kathy Engelbert's extension plan was irrevocably doomed because she misjudged the magnitude of the players' ambition and the unprecedented leverage they had acquired. With new leagues offering immense financial freedom and explicit demand for her removal, the players saw no incentive in merely delaying a confrontation. They desired not just more money, but a complete overhaul of their autonomy and a genuine partnership, not just another temporary truce. The proposed extension, seen as a band-aid on a gaping wound, was swiftly rejected, proving Engelbert's traditional approach was fundamentally out of touch with a rapidly evolving and empowered player landscape. The words hit like a brick wall. The WNBA offered a last-ditch 30-day extension on the current CBA deal, a move they hoped would buy time, but players had already cemented their stance. This wasn't just a negotiation, it was a battle for the very soul of the league, with demands so fundamental that any temporary patch-up, any mere extension, was dead on arrival. The league believed a quick pause would allow cooler heads to prevail, yet the underlying current of frustration, fueled by years of perceived undervaluation, meant this supposed olive branch was merely an illusion. The stage was set for an unprecedented showdown, with player unity stronger than ever, signaling that compromise wouldn't come cheaply or easily. Sources close to the players swiftly countered, revealing they might consider an extension, but only under the right circumstances. The bombshell? Those crucial circumstances, they emphatically stated, do not yet exist. This wasn't a tactical bluff, it was a firm declaration that fundamental issues remained unaddressed, making any short-term deferral pointless. The league's offer was perceived not as a genuine effort to bridge the gap, but as a desperate attempt to avoid a looming work stoppage without offering true concessions. The chasm between the two sides was far too wide for a simple 30-day reprieve to even begin to mend. The sticking point quickly became clear. How could they agree to an extension without concrete concessions from the league? Players weren't just extending to iron out C if A and B weren't already on the table. They demanded capitulation on critical areas like 50% jersey sales, better facilities, and full benefits for motherhood. Without these non-negotiables agreed upon, an extension was nothing more than a stalling tactic designed to pressure them rather than genuinely progress. This deep mistrust signaled that the league profoundly misread the room, underestimating the players' resolve for a truly transformative deal. The specter of a lockout loomed large, a terrifying prospect for players who would lose access to facilities, treatment, and team training. Yet, this dire consequence didn't deter their steadfast resolve. They understood the stakes, but also recognized their unique leverage in this moment. The risk of a work stoppage was a powerful card they were willing to play, believing that short-term hardship would lead to long-term gains. The perception was that if the league truly valued its athletes, it would demonstrate that commitment with concrete action, not just temporary offers. Kathy Engelbert, the WNBA commissioner, acknowledged past deadline extensions, hinting that this was business as usual. However, her tone during the WNBA finals, while hopeful, overlooked the seismic shift in player mentality. What worked in 2019, when a 60-day extension led to a new deal, would not suffice now. This wasn't merely about extending talks, it was about addressing an entirely different scale of demands and a dramatically evolved power dynamic. Engelbert's prior experience with extensions was now a burden, creating a false sense of security about the current situation. Adding fuel to the fire, WNBA senior advisor Aaron Drake publicly declared there would be no new agreement by Friday, blaming the league for a lack of urgency. He famously stated, "It takes two to tango, but that the league struggled to find a beat, to find a rhythm, and to find the same sense of urgency." This was not just candid, it was an open accusation that the league itself was dragging its feet, creating an environment where an extension felt less like a bridge and more like a delay tactic. The dance partners were out of sync, and one side wasn't even showing up for rehearsal. The league swiftly retorted, criticizing the Players Association for taking too long to respond to their October 1st proposal. They claimed the union had only just replied on Monday, suggesting an unfair distribution of blame. This finger-pointing revealed a deeper, more troubling issue, an escalating game of childish delays. If one side made the other wait 15 days, the retaliation was 17, then 20, then 28. This tit-for-tat dynamic meant good faith negotiations were a distant memory, replaced by a battle of wills that eroded any hope for a quick resolution or a meaningful extension. The league then urged the Players Association to spend less time disseminating public information and more time joining us in a constructive engagement across the table. This public spat underscored the breakdown of trust. Instead of closed-door negotiations, both sides were weaponizing public statements, attempting to sway perception rather than find common ground. This public shaming further alienated the players, reinforcing their belief that the league was more concerned with optics than with addressing their core demands. It demonstrated the extension was doomed before it was even offered. The primary sticking point, the undeniable wedge driving these opposing forces apart, revolved around how to structure salaries and revenue distribution. Players demanded a share of revenue, while the league pushed for an uncapped revenue sharing model, directly tied to the league's performance. This seemingly subtle difference hit a vast philosophical divide, one where players felt the league was intentionally undervaluing them by not tying their compensation directly to the surging value they were generating. The language itself was a weapon, obscuring the true financial implications for the athletes. The union vehemently countered, accusing the league of running out the clock and putting lipstick on a pig, asserting the league's proposal was a retread system that isn't tied to any part of the business and intentionally undervalues the players. This wasn't just negotiation, it was an ideological clash over economic justice. The players saw through the facade, understanding that an uncapped model without genuine transparency and accountability still left them at a disadvantage. Their unified voice echoed the sentiment, no more half measures or deceptive language. A crucial revelation emerged, laying bare the true depth of player frustration. The fact that the league now wants to call any part of its proposal uncapped is precisely why its leadership transparency and accountability are being challenged right now. This statement was a direct assault on Cathy Engelbert's integrity and leadership. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust, and the players felt consistently misled and undervalued by the current administration. This challenge to leadership was a fundamental barrier that no 30-day extension could ever hope to bypass. And here's where the narrative truly connected to the league's burgeoning star power. Nafisa Collier's repeated name-dropping of Caitlin Clark in media appearances, all while refusing to meet with Cathy Engelbert for negotiations. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a deliberate strategy. Players were leveraging the immense surge in interest and value brought by stars like Clark, implicitly suggesting that the league's growth was on their backs, not Engelbert's leadership. The message was clear. Clark's era demanded a new financial reality one Engelbert seemed unwilling to provide. The refusal to negotiate wasn't helping the immediate situation, yet it was a calculated move. The players believed they held all the leverage, with alternative leagues like Project B and Unrivaled offering significantly higher pay and equity. The WNBA's exclusivity clause became a major point of contention. Why would they sign a deal limiting their earning potential when other avenues promised 4 times, 10 times the amount of money? This external pressure was a colossal threat to the WNBA's negotiating position, making the extension offer feel inconsequential. The players envisioned a future where they could play in the WNBA, collect substantial league money, and participate in other leagues globally, unburdened by exclusivity clauses. Cathy Engelbert, however, steadfastly maintained her position on exclusivity, viewing it as essential for the WNBA's brand and long-term viability. This diametrically opposed vision created an insurmountable impasse, rendering any short-term extension meaningless. The players were not just asking for more money, they were demanding complete freedom to maximize their careers. This profound disagreement on exclusivity became a linchpin, leading to the undeniable conclusion: these players don't want to sign anything until Kathy Engelbert is gone. This was the true, unvarnished explanation for why the extension was due. It wasn't about deadlines, it was about a fundamental rejection of the current leadership's vision and negotiating stance. The players had lost faith, demanding a new commissioner who would align with their global aspirations and entrepreneurial spirit. The players were effectively using the threat of a prolonged work stoppage, fueled by their growing collective power and the emergence of new revenue streams outside the WNBA, to force Engelbert out. Their strategy was audacious: withhold agreement until a new leader was installed, someone willing to grant them the flexibility and financial terms Engelbert refused. This was a direct challenge to the commissioner's authority, indicating that the path forward required not just a new deal, but a new direction entirely. The WNBA's 30-day extension offer, therefore, was never a viable solution. It was a band-aid on a gaping wound, failing to address the deep-seated grievances regarding pay, revenue share, playing opportunities, and most critically, trust in leadership. Caitlin Clark's unprecedented influence, consciously wielded by prominent players, only amplified the players' demands, making any less than transformational offer seem like an insult. This wasn't merely a delay tactic, it was a testament to the league's fundamental misunderstanding of its own athletes' power and vision. So, as the clock ticked, the WNBA's extension plan stood no chance. The players, emboldened by their leverage and unwavering in their demands, saw through the temporary measure. They weren't just negotiating a contract, they were demanding a revolution, a complete paradigm shift in how the league valued its talent and its future. The vision was clear, the demands non-negotiable, and Kathy Engelbert's extension, lacking these core concessions, was destined to fail from the very moment it was proposed. This was the players' ultimate explanation.